All right. So just in addition, the ease of getting healthcare would be available to everyone. And they would not just have to worry about paying those thousands of dollars to insurance for coverage, since citizens will also have less actions to take towards their banks if they do lose their jobs. This will inevitably allow the citizens to feel at ease during tough times, and it would also give them more chances to recover from this loss. And overall, during times of major job losses, many citizens do not have the money to pay for their expenses. This leads to them losing many important things such as housing, healthcare, and food. Having Medicare for all would mean that these citizens have enough money left overall just to at least sustain themselves.
Medicare for All would also allow ease and faster medical treatment. Medicare for All provides health treatment without any premiums or deductibles, meaning that citizens wouldn't have to give as much money toward healthcare. In Canada, it costs about $2,000 to healthcare and costs $4,000 in private insurance premiums. Having Medicare would remove these expenses and would mean that people would not have to worry about the expensive visits to doctors or the added cost of treatments. And finally, Medicare for All would improve the country's health overall. With all these benefits that come into play, more people would want to go to the doctors. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans are skipping medical care because of the cost. For many Americans, a trip to the doctor hinges on whether they can afford to go or not, rather than if it's a medical necessity. With Medicare for all, these people would go to the healthcare centers, not fearing the cost for checkups. The bottom line is the benefits of Medicare outweigh the consequences. Given the problems of the United States possess in terms of healthcare, the necessities just increase sooner or later, and the problems will only get worse.
Okay. Sam, was that all of your speeches then?
Is that the end of our speech, guys?
Okay. Kelly, why don't we see if you could start yours again and just try to see if we can get in? Go.
Do you want me to start from where I left off or from the top?
Start from the top because the top was garbled. Please.
Okay. First, under a government system such as Medicare for All, having health insurance coverage is not a guarantee that one will actually receive the care that one needs. Advocates for Medicare for All treat universal coverage as if it is one and the same with providing true health security. It is not simply carrying around a health insurance card in one's wallet. It does not guarantee that a doctor, hospital, or drug company will be there when one needs care or the right medication. This is a critical distinction because the very structural changes that must be made in order to grant healthcare as a right to everyone also serve to diminish the likelihood that care will be supplied when needed. Under Medicare for All, millions more Americans will be able to say that they have health coverage, but with more patients trying to see the same number of doctors, waiting times for everyone will have to increase. In Canada, according to Waiting Your Turn, Wait Times for Healthcare in Canada 2018 report, Fraser Institute, December 4th, 2018, where all citizens of coverage under their national health insurance model, patients on average wait 4.3 weeks for a CT scan, 10.6 weeks for an MRI scan, and 3.9 weeks for an ultrasound. In England, another country reporting average wait times for diagnostic services such as an MRI and CT scans. Their National Health Services report the number of patients forced to wait 6 weeks or more as the end of October 2019 is the 6 weeks or more. As the end of October 2019, the total number of diagnostic tests was 33,224, simply extending healthcare coverage to millions of additional people without addressing the incentive structure and resources needed, doctors, nurses, hospitals, and so forth, to deliver care that many people need is not a good way to fix healthcare. Rather than declaring everyone covered through a government program, we should prefer market-based reforms that introduce more health insurance objects to consumers that bring the cost of health insurance down to the levels where everybody can purchase the amount and type of coverage they think is best for themselves and their families. Simply stated, universal health care does not mean that you will universally get the amount, or the time that you need for your health care. Second, under Medicare, all the demand for health care will overwhelm the supply of healthcare, causing delays in treatments. Roger Stark, Dr. Stark, is a healthcare policy analysis for Washington Policy Center. Single payer means long waits for care. February 11, 2019, the Canadian Federal Canadian Act in 1994. It is a pure single-payer system. Every Canadian is covered by the plan and in theory has access to medical care. The provinces administer the plan with funding from federal taxpayers. The government determines what procedures are medically necessary based on data and statistics. The Fraser Institute think in Vancouver, British Columbia has tracked waiting times for patients to receive healthcare in Canada for the past 20 years. It surveys specialist physicians across 12 specialties throughout Canada. The Institute recently released the waiting list data for 2018. Americans interested in single-payer healthcare will find it sobering. The median time for specialty treatments after a patient was referred by a primary care doctor in 2018 was 20 weeks. Saskatchewan had the lowest wait at 15 weeks. The high was New Brunswick at 45 weeks, which is nearly a year. On average, patients waited 9 weeks to see a specialist, then waited an additional 11 weeks to receive treatment. Only 12% of delays in treatment were at the patient's request. There were also delays in diagnostic procedures. In 2018, Canadians waited 4 weeks to receive a CT scan or an ultrasound and 10 weeks to receive an MRI. There's a reason behind these numbers. In Canada, the supply of healthcare is overwhelmed by the demand, leading to severe shortages. Consequently, medical care is rationed using long waiting lists and by limiting the number of certain medical procedures allowed. Unfortunately, cost and wait times have not improved since 1984. Long wait times are more than an inconvenience for Canadians. Simple medical problems, if not treated early, are more than an inconvenience for Canadians.
Okay, let's go ahead, Sam, and stop right there because I think we lost Kelly for a second. So
Yeah.
go ahead and we can go to your next speech, please.
All right, guys. To economics, this
Living
is
distance from the United States.
Kelly, go ahead and
Oh,
stop.
Kelly's back.
No, that's fine. I think 6 minutes are up according to my clock.
That was 4 for me, but
Okay, well, I'm
all right.
sorry.
All right. So this is Gurmahak and Kieran.
So Medicare for All presents many benefits from an economical perspective. Medicare for All would not only be a good policy for the evident reason, which is to protect the health of the U.S. citizens, but it would also produce several positive benefits to the economy, such as expanding worker options, providing easier and cheaper access to the healthcare for the elderly, increasing job quality and performance, and decreasing national medical debt.
So to begin, Medicare for All would give U.S. citizens a more broadened choice in terms of career options. The expansion of healthcare access is most likely to increase the demand for full-time healthcare workers. It would present 2.3 million new jobs to those in this field. Despite the common misconception that Medicare for All would result in a decrease in jobs by eliminating the private insurance industry, this healthcare system would in fact allow for the creation of millions of new jobs. Bernie Sanders' proposal argued that this plan would eliminate nearly 2 million jobs in the private insurance sector. However, a 2020 analysis by the Economic Policy Institute reassured that not only would these jobs be replaced by the Medicare for All system, but create millions of new ones. The elimination of jobs in the billing and administrative industry of healthcare who may be threatened with layoffs would be able to find new jobs in the expanding healthcare sector. It would also reduce job lock, which is a motivating factor for workers to stay in undesirable positions to keep their healthcare coverage. A 2015 review found that job lock reduces the rate of people leaving their jobs by 15 to 25%. Overall, workers would be able to go where their skills and preferences lies, not just to workplaces with affordable health plans.
There are certain medical issues that are expected to be a challenge for the healthcare system due to the increase in the aging population. Some of these issues include cancer, dementia, diabetes, and the increase of falls, which can result in the breaking of bones. Medicare for All will result in cheaper and easily accessible healthcare to the elderly community in the U.S. With the increase of health issues with the individuals in this age group, the importance of having affordable medical checkups and treatment is crucial. An average pension payout in the United States is $95,600, which barely covers the medical costs depending on the hospital for many of the most common surgeries or treatments. Medicare for All will help to make the life of the elderly easier and ensure that they're not in debt and are using their pension plans and saved up money to enjoy their lives instead of paying highly expensive hospital bills.
Though some will lose their jobs because of this system, Medicare for All would still double the number of jobs available by providing every worker with healthcare, creating more choices for employees and boosting wages since employers no longer have to worry about the cost of health insurance. By expanding coverage to the uninsured, adding new benefits, and eliminating cost sharing between employees and employers, Medicare for All would encourage more Americans to seek healthcare services. By increasing job quality and wages, it also applies to the overall labor market. The availability of employment and labor in terms of supply and demand increases with the Medicare for All system. It provides millions of new jobs, increases the demand for healthcare services and professionals, and gives citizens freedom in choosing an appropriate job for themselves that they enjoy. Medicare for All would increase job quality by making all jobs preferable by increasing the potential for higher wages and in terms of insurance coverage. With the combined effort of workers enjoying their place of work and having accessible healthcare to maintain their health, job quality will visibly increase, reaping several external benefits to society.
137 million Americans are currently struggling with medical debt. Having Medicare for All infused in our economy will aid and support every individual with decreasing or completely eliminating their medical debts that have been brought upon them due to the varying elements of a medical bill. Medical bills include doctor or hospital visits, prescription or over-the-counter medication and drugs, surgeries and treatments, and many more. Medical debt can become a more serious issue when the fact that 66.5% of the personal bankruptcies are tied to the medical bills due to the various number of medical issues. This is significant because it proves that certain people have been so in debt that they have to declare themselves bankrupt. Medicare for All will not only decrease the debt for the particular individual, but also the national debt due to the fact that this will ensure that no individual in the United States is in debt or has to face personal bankruptcy due to medical bills. This will ensure that the United States as a whole is more economically stable.
Medicare for All has several positive benefits to the economy as discussed, such as expanding workers' options, increasing job quality and performance, providing easier and cheaper access to healthcare for the elderly, and decreasing national medical debt. Even with considering the many advantages the economy reaps as a result of the Medicare for All system, it is important to remember that the health of the U.S. citizens is much more of a priority than the economy, though that is what is most prioritized among those who are against implementing the Medicare for All system. In conclusion, Medicare for All would provide everyone with accessible healthcare. This would allow for the feeling of security within citizens, knowing they all have equal access to accommodating healthcare services.
Okay, Robert, you going to present for our side, please?
Okay. There are three reasons why Medicare for All will be bad for the economy of the United States. First, Medicare for All, as we know, costs too much. According to economic analysis of Senator Sanders' proposed Medicare for All legislation, adopting Medicare for All would commit the federal government to approximately $32 trillion in spending over the first 10 years of the program. At that price tag, this health reform proposal is too expensive for the nation currently to afford. These were the conclusions from the Cost of National Single Payer Healthcare System 2018 and the Sanders Single Healthcare Plan 2016. Advocates for Medicare for All concede that we could have to raise taxes in order to pay the program, but they fail to appreciate how large increases would be. According to one study that explored the different options for financing Medicare for All, the government would have to raise payroll taxes by 32% on workers and businesses, or levy a 25% income surtax, or institute a new 42% value-added tax (VAT) on consumption, or charge a person a mandatory public premium averaging about $7,500 per capita. Looked at another way by the Black House study from Mercatus, if all currently projected federal, individual, and corporate income tax collections were doubled, it would still be insufficient to pay for the program. Not is the projected cost of switching the entire country's health payments over to Medicare for All extremely high. It's also uncertain and risky. In the interest of being as fair as possible to the proposal, the $32 trillion figure is an estimate that generously assumes there will be some significant savings from administrative costs and drug costs. In fact, the model used in this study to come up with the overall cost figure assumes that reimbursements, i.e. payments to doctors, will be roughly 40% lower than they are today. If anything, since it is far from certain that these savings will materialize as predicted, current estimates represent a best-case scenario that understates the cost of the program. Given the precarious fiscal state of the United States already, within a $22.2 trillion national debt, and the federal government running chronic budget deficits, we simply cannot afford Medicare for all currently. Number two, second, the impact. Over 44,000 doctors will leave their professions under Medicare for all, FTI Consulting 2020. Already, the United States is facing a healthcare workforce shortage that could reach 151,000 direct care workers and 121,300 physicians by 2030. While the underlying causes of projected workforce shortages are varied and complex, most are tied directly to low reimbursement rates and the resulting negative effects on wages and staffing, particularly for rural and undeveloped communities. Extending Medicare payment systems to a broad population could have a significant negative impact on the adequacy of the country's healthcare workforce, access to care, and ultimately patient outcomes. Key findings: Medicare for all, when fully implemented, could result in a nationwide loss of 44,693 positions by 2050. Relative to current projections, by 2050, urban and rural areas alike could see a decrease of 5.4% in the supply of physicians. The impact of Medicare for all on the primary care workforce would be particularly acute, resulting in the loss of 10,286 primary care physicians by 2050. Number three, impact. The UK will have a shortfall of 250,000 Medicare staff by 2030, which hurts the patient outcomes. Leo Hannian, 2019. Not surprisingly, some doctors who are being trained in England are choosing to practice medicine in other countries rather than facing the alternative of dealing with a remarkably deficient National Health Service. UK physician brain drain has been going on for as long as the existence of their national healthcare system. This has now become so extreme that 35% of existing British doctors are imported from other countries, most from very poor countries. Staffing problems, which are obviously critical now, will become extreme in another decade. A recent report forecasts a shortfall of 250,000 Medicare staff by 2030. And keep in mind that predictions such as these are almost always too optimistic. This means that the current completely unacceptable waiting times for treatment will increase considerably, according to January NHS England data. Almost 25% of cancer patients didn't start treatment on time despite an urgent referral by their primary care doctor. If you're wondering what on time means, then think of how airlines travel times. For the NHS, on time already means 62 days after referral. Sadly, waiting times do matter. Only 81% of UK breast cancer patients survive at least 5 years after diagnosis, compared to 89% in the United States. And just 83% of patients in the United Kingdom live 5 years after a prostate cancer diagnosis, compared to 97% in the United States. Doctor shortages will lead to less services. Less services equal less healthy population. Economically, we cannot afford to have less care for more money. In conclusion, if you do not believe me or my teammates, please believe in this. Leading economists agree that Medicare for all is not the solution to the U.S. healthcare crisis. More than 50 leading U.S. economists and professors have signed an open letter warning that the proposed Medicare for all plans to place Americans on a government-run system would trigger shortages, degrade quality, and discourage medical innovation. Americans should have access to the health care they need and have insurance protection for the medical expenses they cannot afford, said the letter released last week. We, the undersigned economists, believe that proposed Medicare for all plans will lead to shortages throughout the health sector that would restrict the access to care, undermine quality, lead to innovation, stifling price controls, and adversely impact the economy. The 55 senators included Michael Boskin, who chaired the White House Council of Economic Advisors under George H.W. Bush, the former Office of Management Budget Director James Miller III, and Chapman University professor. Okay.
Time. Go ahead,
We have.
Sam.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So ethics, which is, I believe, Sana and Sahaj.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Debating ethics and morals is very difficult, as many perspectives have to be considered, and there are various approaches one could take regarding ethics. Therefore, we have compiled multiple ethical views and standpoints regarding the system of not having universal healthcare established in society. Firstly, From a utilitarian approach to ethics, having people pay thousands upon thousands of dollars for basic treatment at hospitals is unethical. A utilitarian approach seeks to balance the negatives and positives of certain situations in order to give the most benefits to a majority of people. Therefore, let's compare some of the positives and negatives that come alongside not having universal healthcare. For the positives, having people pay for healthcare means that taxpayers will not be taxed for universal healthcare. Wait times may also be faster, as those who can pay are helped first. And there are probably a few more positives. However, if we look at the negatives, including how expensive it is for people to pay for healthcare, how in this system, no one is entitled to the healthcare that they need and require, how some people cannot afford the healthcare they need at all, and that takes them to do very, I guess, out there things. And there are many, many more negatives on top of that. Already, we can see that from a utilitarian standpoint, having people pay thousands of dollars for healthcare is unethical, as the negative outcomes that occur because of this system are far greater than any of the positives that some individuals will benefit from. Moreover, paying for healthcare is also unethical from a common good approach to ethics. The common good approach to ethics strives to benefit the entire society as a whole, rather than a certain group or certain individuals, by taking actions and putting policies in place that are beneficial for everybody. Therefore, we need to understand who is actually benefiting from having citizens pay for their own healthcare. Possibly doctors, the government, and maybe some groups of citizens who can afford their own healthcare with no issue. However, the people who are not as fortunate struggle to afford and pay for their own healthcare if and when they need it. In fact, over 55 million Americans have difficulty affording healthcare. This shows how by not being beneficial to all or most Americans, the American healthcare system and other healthcare systems like it are unethical from a common good approach to ethics. It's the Hedges' turn now.
All right. From a consequentialist approach to ethics, making citizens pay for their healthcare is unethical because some people cannot afford healthcare. As a result of not being able to afford healthcare in their own country, citizens are forced to search for alternatives such as traveling somewhere where they really could afford it, unfortunately. Each year, more than 1 million Americans leave the US to travel to European countries for affordable medical healthcare help. In 2017, the average healthcare spending cost per person was $10,224 American, and whereas in industrial countries in the same year, it costs approximately $5,280 American dollars. The average household income that same year in 2017 was $61,372. This means that the average American would spend approximately 17% of their household income on healthcare. This means that Americans would tend to leave their own home, travel far away overseas, whilst taking time off their work for personal health reasons. In addition, many Americans do not accept healthcare because they are aware of the fact that they won't be able to afford it in the long run. In Massachusetts, a woman that was severely injured at a subway, yet she screamed, telling people not to call 911. The woman was begging people not to call an ambulance for fear of high hospital costs. People should not have to guess or analyze if they could afford hospital expenses, especially in an emergency. Having expensive healthcare makes people not get the healthcare they may need immediately, and can really cause a dilemma that should never happen. The government should never make people choose between financial stability and physical health. Putting people in this dilemma is very unethical from multiple ethical viewpoints. Universal healthcare is beneficial for all and is able to counteract these unethical dilemmas. In conclusion, we believe that forcing people to pay their own healthcare is unethical from multiple approaches to ethics.
Okay. Noel?
There are three ethical and moral issues here. First, using monopsony power to dictate lower prices will cause physicians, hospitals, and drug companies will cause them to provide fewer goods and services and will stifle innovation. In normal markets, when buyers and sellers negotiate with each other to arrive at a mutually agreeable prices, it is a good thing for the economy. Both parties win. But when there is only one buyer, a monopsonist, and that buyer demands a price for goods or services that the seller considers too low, economic theory dictates that the seller will offer fewer of those goods or services and might even decide to close its business or produce something else instead. Under Medicare for All, the federal government would have monopsony power over physicians, hospitals, and drug companies. If the federal government does not use its buying power to negotiate lower prices, then the case for Medicare for All to lower health expenditures is weakened. On the other hand, if the federal government does use its buying power, it risks setting prices too low for those who produce healthcare goods and services, which again weakens the case. Physicians will stop taking new patients, hospitals will stop scheduling needed surgeries, drug companies will stop investing in research and development. We cannot risk that the government, acting as a sole buyer, will know exactly the right price to offer for everything such that taxpayers do not overpay for what they get. Yet physicians, hospitals, and drug companies still have enough incentive to stay in business. Only markets can achieve such a precise and delicate balance. Doctors get paid 30% less under Medicare for All, causing either hospitals to cut the size of their workforce or physicians to leave the industry due to lower pay. Medicare for All will cripple doctors, hospitals, Pacific Research Institute, July 11th, 2019. Medicare for All would make each of these problems worse. A government takeover of the healthcare system would smoother doctors and new regulations and bureaucratic tasks, while patients would attempt to consume even more care now that it's free. Doctors would have to work even longer hours to meet that demand, and they'd have to do so for less pay. Medicare for All envisions paying doctors at Medicare's rates, which are significantly lower than those for private insurance. Physicians would receive about 30% less for common procedures, including hernia repairs or gallbladder removals, compared to current private rates. Reimbursement rates for emergency visits and chest x-rays would be 60% lower. Second, more doctors, the better health people are in the United States. This plan will result in less doctors making the US more unhealthy. For every 10 additional physicians per 100,000 people, mortality rates from common causes declined by up to 1.4%. Lisa Rappaport, Reuters supply of primary care doctors linked with mortality rates. Mortality rates are lower in American communities with more primary care physicians than in areas of the country with fewer doctors, a study suggests. Overall, in the United States, the total number of primary care physicians rose from 196,000 in 2005 to 204,000 in 2015, the study found. But because of disproportionate losses of providers in rural areas, the average number of primary care physicians for every 100,000 people in the population declined from 46.6 to 41.1 during the same period. Each 10 additional primary care physicians per 100,000 people were associated with a 51.5-day increase in life expectancy. The study also found every 10 extra primary care doctors was also tied to declines of up to 1.4% mortality rates from common causes like cancer, heart diseases, and respiratory disorders. Single-payer healthcare systems have worse healthcare outcomes because of shortages and delays. It may seem counterintuitive, but single-payer healthcare proposals like Medicare for All could very well destroy Medicare as we know it and jeopardize medical care for seniors. It's not just because single-payer systems like those in Britain and Canada hold down costs by limiting the availability of doctors and treatments, even for the most serious life-threatening diseases like cancer, brain tumors, and heart disease. And it's not just because single-payer systems restrict access to the newest drugs for cancer and other serious diseases, sometimes for years, compared with the United States system, or that single-payer systems have shown to have worse outcomes than the United States system for many common diseases like cancer, high blood pressure, stroke, heart disease, and diabetes, or that tens of thousands of citizens in single-payer countries have died because of wait times for non-emergency treatment. And it's not just because Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill could cost an estimated $32 trillion in its first decade, more than double all currently projected federal individual and corporate income tax collection. Third, less money going into the healthcare sector would result in less investment into the research and development of new drugs, or in this case, new medical services. Medicare for All would lower prices through negotiations between the government and drug companies. It would also allow generic competition if a company refuses to negotiate. Medicare for All will drastically lower prescription drugs prices by taking on farmers' greed. March 3rd, 2019. The Medicare for All Act includes a key provision modeled after the Medicare Negotiation and Competitive Licensing Act, which would lower drug prices for all Americans by allowing the government to negotiate lower prices with corporations. And if a corporation refused to lower the price and threatened patients' access to the medication, generic competition would be allowed using a competitive license. Yale law professor Amy Kapczynski and Harvard professor Aaron Kelsim demonstrated that this authority exists and is used across the government. It is simply a matter of applying the same authority to generic pharmaceutical competition. The Department of Defense has used the same authority to purchase generic versions of night vision lenses and lead-free bullets, and the Department of Treasury has used the authority to purchase generic software. It is expensive to develop and approve drugs. Developing a new prescription medicine that gains marketing approval is estimated to cost drug makers $2.6 billion, according to a recent study by Duff's Center for the Study of Drug Development and published in the Journal of Health Economics. This is up from $802 million in 2003, equal to approximately $1 billion in 2013 dollars, and thus a 145% increase in the 10-year gap. Furthermore, while that average time it takes to bring a drug through clinical trials has decreased, the rate of success has gone down by almost half to just 12%. Doves breaks down its 2.5 billion figure per approved compound to include approximate average out-of-pocket cost of 1.4 billion and time costs. The expected returns that investors forgo while drug is in development of 1.2 billion. Reduced profits could increase research and development by 30 to 60%. The basic finding is that cutting prices by 40 to 50% in the United States will lead to between 30 and 60% fewer R&D projects being undertaken in the early stage of developing a new drug. Relatively modest price changes, such as 5 or 10%, are estimated to have relatively little impact on the incentives for product development, perhaps a negative 5%. For the pharmaceutical industry, one economic problem is that only 3 out of 10 of their products generate after-tax returns. In excess of average after-tax R&D costs, the scientific process is heavily regulated and involves significant technical risk. Only 1 in several thousands compounds investigated ever makes it through the full development process to gain approval of the FDA. The vast majority of R&D projects fail for reasons related to safety, efficiency, or commercial availability, the authors note. For compounds that do gain FDA approval and are taken to the market, the entire process from discovery to launch takes on average about 15 years. Impact calculus here: less money, less drugs, less health versus current system. The current system, although it is far from perfect, is not riddled with as many problems as this solution. It should be clearly down on the basis of ethical treatment of people. We provide more benefits for people to have better healthcare than our opponents do in this argument.
All right.
I guess it's our turn to ask you guys questions, and I think we have 8 questions to ask.
Yeah. So for questions, do you ask a question and then we provide an answer?
Yes. And then what we're going to do, Sam, is that we'll ask 8 questions and you can ask questions. So wherever the 5 minutes is up, and then you ask us questions. Okay.
All right. Cool.
Okay.
How are you going to read them off?
Christoph is going to do it. Christoph.
All right.
America has something similar from Medicare for All. It's called Medicaid. We also have military hospitals, and people under the influence of them don't particularly enjoy it due to the wait time and quality of their healthcare. Why should we provide universal healthcare when Americans who already use something similar to it don't enjoy it?
Do you want an answer for that?
Yes.
Sure, I'll take that. So let me just pull up a study that I have right here specifically on VA hospitals. So there was a study done on VA hospitals where VA hospitals did better than non-VA hospitals on 6 of 9 patient safety indicators. as well as mortality and readmissions. Non-VA hospitals, VA hospitals only did worse on 4 of 10 patient indicators and did worse on only 4 of 9 behavioral health indicators. These hospitals have better outcomes, just generally, for patients and for medical procedures. And I'm fairly sure, although I don't have, here it is. So they also do better on safety and effectiveness than private hospitals. Most studies show that VA hospitals do better on safety and effectiveness. Safety, mortality, morbidity, complications, other safety measures, effectiveness, outpatient care, non-ambulatory care, medication management, availability of services, and end-of-life care. This is simply not correct. In all of the data I've seen, VA hospitals do significantly better than non-VA hospitals.
All right. Well, what about the Medicaid?
Medicaid? Sorry, what was your claim on Medicaid?
I said people under Medicaid don't particularly enjoy it either.
People under Medicaid don't particularly enjoy it. Medicaid is the program for, which is Medicaid, which is Medicare? Can you refresh me on that if you don't mind?
Sure. Medicaid is when the government provides low-income households with
the low-income one. Got it.
Coverage.
Yeah, sure. So generally in America, you have a pretty chronic low funding problem with pretty much any low-income targeted programs. So specifically for Medicaid, it seems to me like the people under Medicaid are already in conditions that would make them generally worse off for healthcare. And so that is a possibility to why they have less satisfaction, although I would have to see the data that you're referring to on their satisfaction before I make any concrete rebuttals.
Before I go on to my next question, I was specifically talking about what people who experienced these conditions, what they think of it. And I told you that they don't particularly like it due to the quality of health and wait time. So should we also take into consideration their opinion?
We should take into consideration their opinion, of course. But when it comes to the end of the day, if someone is given $1 billion and they're like, their opinion, it matters, but like the quality, the actual results matter significantly more. Also, do you mind linking this data in the like maybe a satisfaction survey or something like that? Do you mind linking this data in the chat?
I'm operating this on my phone, and for order for
me
that's
to
all right. All right. Let's see. You mentioned $1 billion. What was that about?
That was just a sort of an allegory to illustrate how sometimes when we're looking at results versus what people think of their results, the results actually are what's more important. Just so if the Medicare patients are getting better treatment than they would be without Medicaid. If the Medicaid patients are getting better treatment than they would be without Medicaid, and they're still like not very happy with it, as much as that is unfortunate, they are getting better treatment than they would without.
All right, my second question. Today, Americans have faster access to more medicine than anywhere else in the world. Doctors and patients work together to decide which medicine is right for them. That's because the United States has a research economic system that fosters and supports medical innovation. Why should we change it when America has it so good?
Do you guys mind if I take just this one, and then I'm gonna probably leave the rest, maybe other than 1 or 2 to the rebuttal team and the other guys. So with regards to things like drug prices, there are multiple ways to do it. I believe you guys actually brought up the ability for the US to purchase generics of something, and that's interesting. But what is the system that I have found that works better than what the US has and better than what a lot of other countries have is the ability for the government to purchase patents and reimburse companies for R&D. It is no joke how much R&D costs. It is upwards of now $900 million. That's nearly $1 billion on average to get drugs through all the FDA testing and clinical trials, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is, after that, they are incentivized to raise prices because they have to recoup all that money. And it makes a lot of sense to me and to the economists that I've seen write and speak about this, although I don't have something on hand right now, that purchasing drug patents and saying, okay, we're going to recompensate you for this and remove that incentive for you to raise the price and make other companies who didn't make that investment able to produce these drugs at lower cost in generic form. I believe that is what several other countries do. I'm fairly sure Australia and New Zealand have similar enough systems to that. They foster the same amount, or at least at the very least, similar amounts of innovation in drug production, because they still give those companies that massive incentive, and they also allow companies to take more risks with their development. Because a lot of the time you get halfway through and you've already spent several $100 million on it. I'm talking about research and development. And then you have to stop because there's no future for these drugs. And so you can't recoup those costs. This allows companies to say, okay, we're going to enter into research and development. And, you know, wherever we get, we sell that patent to the government. At least if it's successful, there is still some amount of risk, which is a mechanism of any capitalist system. It allows them to say, okay, we're getting that back. But it also allows people to be able to have drugs at a reasonable cost. And drugs are something which, in economic terms, do not have an elastic demand. The cheaper drugs get, you're not going to buy more of them. You go on a specific treatment plan with a specific goal in mind. I'm not going to go to a store and buy, you know, many packs of drugs unless it is for nefarious purposes, of course. But drugs need to be low cost because people are going to do whatever they can to buy them, no matter at what cost. That is why rationing insulin has become such a problem in America, which is a problem nowhere else in the world.
Right.
Hey, Sam, let's just ask one more question because we're going to be running out of our 5-minute time. So, Christoph, ask one more question, please. Go your last one.
Ask two more. Can I ask time for at least two more?
Hurry.
All right. So Canada has something called a triage, which if for my American friends that don't know, a triage is when a nurse looks in you and determines whether you're eligible to get treated or get looked at a doctor at least. And if they don't decide you're eligible, they ask you to come back another day. Why should someone else decide whether you're eligible to see a doctor or not? Isn't that wrong?
Do you guys have in mind someone that would like to respond? Is anyone talking? Dev, feel free to respond if you'd like. Can you not hear anyone? Oh, that's unfortunate. I will deal with that. Does anyone have a rebuttal? If not, I can take this one as well. All right. So from my knowledge, a triage is just an assessment of the level of injury that you have. Right now in America, that is done by you, and you have no medical training. I know a man who fell out of a 30-foot tree stand when he was hunting. He felt like a crack in his ribs and he didn't go to the doctors for weeks. Not only because he didn't have medical insurance to pay for it, but because he didn't know something was wrong. So checkups from nurses to determine if there actually is anything wrong with you are pretty standard. And because of the Hippocratic Oath, it's more of a best practice thing than if you were to assess yourself, because they're sworn to act in your interest. And if they, with their more medical training than you have, are seeing something, then you'll be sent to the doctor.
But a nurse cannot determine how much pain do you feel. That's only what you can determine, or what you're feeling, right?
Yeah, one of the most standard questions in a doctor's office is a nurse will ask, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, how does this feel? I broke my wrist and they asked me that. I was given a triage. I believe it was a triage. It was just an assessment from a nurse to see what it was. And then they sent me in because I said I felt pain. Emergency room care in Canada is pretty standardly just good on all measures, really. And in terms of assessment, like because you feel that, nurses recognize that you need to be part of the assessment. And so they'll ask you questions about how you feel, because how you feel often is a good indicator of whether you're injured or not.
Okay, last question, Christoph.
All right, my last question. California denied implementing Medicare for all because it would double the debt they were already in. If one state cannot afford it, what makes you think other states can?
All right, does anyone, maybe someone from the economics team, would you like to respond to that?
Sorry, hi. I don't know if you could see me, but you're just looking at one state as a whole. As a whole country, you should be able to do something about it. And one of the best things to do would be obviously to fund for it. If you don't want to raise the taxes, is to eliminate the private insurance sectors, because a lot of the private insurance companies are making more money than like the people that are using it. Because even though there are insurance companies, a lot of those people aren't insured. So you're putting your citizens at risk, because a lot of those people in America are not insured. Around 30 million of Americans are not insured because they are unable to afford the insurance. So it's best to have a plan that suits the entire country, and you're basing it off of one state's thing when you can build a better economy by looking at all of the other states to seeing what every state can do to make Medicare
Oh, was that it?
Okay, let's go to us asking you guys, Sam. Are you asking us, I mean? Canada, go ahead and ask your questions and our team will answer. Sam, you with us? Okay, I guess Sam is out. Sana or Seja, you have any questions you would like to ask our bunch? Anybody from Canada?
I think Sam got kicked out, but does anyone from the rebuttal team want to ask?
Okay, if not, let's go to the rebuttals.
Should I do it for them? Because I don't know if
Yeah, go
Deb is
ahead.
able
I
to
don't know if Sam's gonna come back in time, so just ask a few of the questions that you have.
Hi, I'm back.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
okay.
Okay.
Hey, what's up?
Okay. Ask our guys questions then, Sam. Go.
Oh, yeah, sure. I will bring up some of the questions we had, and I want to see which are the best. So I think I'll probably just do the asking. All right, sure. So you mentioned a lot about increases in wait times. Do these increases in wait times for everyone in the country decrease health outcomes?
Is it okay if I answer this?
Go, Robert.
Well, yes, depending on the type of disease or the type of ailments happening. Earlier, we stated that the wait times for stuff like cancer in various forms and other ways of like analyzing, when someone's sick, like MRI or CMRI or something like that, they increase. As we know, these diseases aren't on a set schedule. At one point, they could stop. At one point, they could go to best versus track. So wait times inherently they increase the likelihood of someone surviving to the end. That wait time to get to what they're going to might not be as high as if they were able to pay for the stuff they want immediately instead of just waiting for their turn in line. Because as we all know, health isn't just feeling this, you're feeling this, you're feeling this, you're feeling this, you're feeling this immediately. It could always change at the snap, like the drop of a pin.
Yeah, a follow-up on that. A lot of the stats that you had for survival after wait times was survival after diagnosis. In my research, I found that a lot of the American healthcare system, their failures were that people were dying without a diagnosis. People were dying before they could go to the doctor and be diagnosed. It seems to me, like in the stats that you had for survivability after wait times, those stats don't account for this shortcoming of your healthcare system. Do you have something to say to that?
Personally, that would be up to human error. It takes somebody else to sort of drive themselves down to the doctor's office to see what's going on with them, because somebody could get tested for cancer this year and then be like, "Oh, I'm good for life," essentially, and they could come in an aggressive form next time. The stuff that you were mentioning earlier are mostly human error, and we can't really figure out what the human error was until too late, or until somebody goes in and asks to get tested again.
All right. The next question is, my apologies. We have quite a few written down, and a lot of them are good. I just want to make sure that we're getting the best for our time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So
you want to just go to rebuttal, Sam, because of time?
Oh yeah. Do you mind if I ask one more question?
Oh yeah, no, fine.
All right. So pretty much every other OECD, G8, G20 nation has some form of universal health care, whether it's single payer or multi-payer. Why does America continue to not form some sort of universal healthcare system?
Actually, during my questions, you mentioned that people under Medicaid, which I already explained what that was, were getting better care than they were and normal health treatments. So to answer your question, we do have something similar to Medicare for all, only for individuals who actually need it.
So a single or multi-payer healthcare system is what I was asking about. Why has your country not followed suit?
Well,
if I can answer, so sorry.
Oh, please go ahead. Yeah, something to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert. We'll start Robert and Christoph.
To sort of answer to try and answer what you're saying, that many of our country, the way we've sort of evolved towards our sort of current stance on healthcare is way more varied than others have. Like Canada has, what was it, back in the 80s when they announced that, when they put that Medicare for all thing into effect. In our 80s, we're sort of living in that sort of time when the economy was booming for us. We were living through basically some of the best times we had at that time. At that point in time, the idea of healthcare at like medical, single payer, and multi-payer hadn't really crossed our minds, and that mostly changed back when more leaders of the Democratic Party are get more elected into our offices. So, to answer your question, it's the way we sort of our nation has sort of evolved, grown up to be. We don't really have that sort of idea of Medicare for all being put in, and now that we have it, we've realized that it's been a bit too late to implement now because of our economy, the impact and such, and the effectiveness that we've seen through statistics.
Okay.
All right, so let's move to rebuttals. Rebuttal speeches. I was a little bit unsure how this was to work. So did you guys write speeches beforehand for rebuttal, or have you been writing speeches during this process?
We've done both. We've done
okay.
both.
I don't think we have a rebuttal speech.
We have a rebuttal speech, and then let's go to feedback, okay? So
yeah,
if
sure.
You don't have one, I'd really like to get the feedback and get some dialogue going here, if you could.
Absolutely, yeah.
but let's go ahead and Sierra, could you give your rebuttal speech and then we'll do our feedback. Go, Sierra.
Okay. Our worthy opponents have argued these important points. First, healthcare is a basic right. The provision of Medicare is for all is something that is universal basic right. It is the part of the parcel of every society to have and provide basic healthcare services to all of its citizens. This separates the government from the people with the government against the common people. However, this simply is not true. Cross-apply the fact that only basic rights that exist according to there are found in the first 10 amendments of the US Constitution. You cannot make the claim that this is false and get by with it. This is a logical fallacy of confusing needs and wants. You may want to have healthcare. Healthcare is not a right. Therefore, this argument fails to meet the burden of the proof needed in this round. Second, Medicare for all is important to bring better healthcare. They said that it was very important for population. The population of our country and societies in general needs the rights of medical care for all. This is one services that the people are often unable to pay for, especially the poor people of the country, making them very vulnerable to dangerous disease. The difficulty here is that they fail to prove this claim by saying that it doesn't make it so. Logical fallacy is bandwagon. They are trying to appeal or convince people through the glowing generalities and impressive words, not by good cold facts. Please cross-apply these two things. I ask you, how can this be good for a nation if it does these two things? First, huge costs on government. The government will naturally have to bear expenses of healthcare for all citizens. This means the government will have to bear huge costs, which might increase the overpopulation and other such instances of ill governments. This means the Medicare for all systems may be problematic. Second, large tax increases. The taxes of people will increase if there is Medicare for all. Since private companies will not be paying for most of the citizens' taxes, it is very likely that the government will be making the citizens pay the taxes themselves. This means higher cost of living and indirect tax. They said that Medicare for all is good for the population. The Medicare for all service is not only good for poor people, but rich people as well. This guarantees a right to livelihood to many people, rich and poor, without having to pay or raise money for the treatment of their sickness. Cross-apply the fact that economy would bottom out the employment rate that would be up to the depression of era levels or better. They said that health of people better. The people of the country, rich or poor or middle class, will not have any problems in dealing with their sickness. This is because the general health of all people will have lesser serious implications due to the system healthcare. Medicare ensures this well. How could this be possible if adopting this program would bring you these results? First, lower quality of services. The quality of services will drop due to Medicare for all. This means that the people who are trying to ensure these problems of the systems eradicate may in turn be creating problems as the hospitals and nursing homes may not have enough space to accommodate. Second, elective procedures take long time. The procedures in which are elective, for example, plastic surgery and other procedures, may take long time to fulfill. This is because people who are willing to be opting for these procedures will have been given lesser priority than those waiting for emergency procedures. Third, drugs are rare conditions may not be covered. The drugs that are required for treatment in conditions which are quite rare will not be provided for the people who have these conditions under the banner of Medicare for all. It may be the case that the people who are trying to provide this will have to pay the regular prices. Fourth, there would be lesser insensitive to study medicine. The insensitive to study medicine would become doctors, usually comes from the interest in making a status and some hard-earned money while sustaining oneself in the system. This makes it quite difficult for people interested in studying medicine. Medicare may deter from this goal. This would result in rationing of care and decrease in hospitals, resulting in decrease of medical care for our society. Therefore, we see no other vote in this round to accept the con side because the con side in this debate will effectively help out more people in our society and live a healthier life.
Thank you very much. Sam, if we could, let's go ask everybody what they learned by this process and what can we give to other people to have this type of open discussions.
Yeah, sure. All right. Do you want me to go along, my guys, and ask them?
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Let's start.
All righty.
I'll try to get everybody shown so we can see them again.
All right. I'm gonna go roughly in speaking order. I'm starting with Akshayan. If Akshayan is not able to speak, I'm gonna go to Jimmy.
So you want me to say what I learned?
Yeah.
All right. So basically, I gained this perspective of both sides of how Medicare for all should be treated. and how it is beneficial and has its consequences at the same time from all these speeches. And it really opened my mind to like what is actually right and what is ethical and unethical.
All right. So let's go to Gurmahak.
So I already knew that we were gonna have different opinions on exactly what we thought was ethical or what we thought we couldn't do. But this was a great learning experience to see how like someone else thinks of the same topics that we think of, especially since like we're here in Canada and you guys are in US, and how you view what goes on in your country and how we view it.
All right, Kieran.
I think I learned that from the con side's perspective that they see or they view Medicaid as or Medicare as similar to what we were trying to argue to implement. So Medicare for all.
All right, and then I'm gonna move to Sana.
Yeah, so I learned like over the course of the debate, like the different perspectives that the con side had on what universal healthcare would do for their country specifically. I don't think any of my opinions really changed because of this debate. I still strongly believe in what I believed in before it. However, I think I got a better understanding of why people enjoy and like the American healthcare system better than universal healthcare. Yeah.
All right, and then we're going to go to Sahaj.
I learned that the economic standpoint of having the citizens pay for healthcare now better understand why it's a good idea, and I appreciate your points.
All right, and I believe we have Raj here as well. Raj, would you like to speak?
Yeah, yeah, I learned that everybody has like different point of views, and how the stats of how it's gonna affect the economy, and if it's in a positive and negative way, and it affects the government in both ways.
Sure, and then I'm going to give Akshayan a chance to speak if he's still here. I don't believe he is. All right. Yeah, and then you guys. Do you want me to mention each of you guys? I guess we can start with Robert.
Go ahead if you want to say something, Sam, and then we'll go ahead and our guys go.
Oh yeah, sure. I thought it was really, really interesting to see how people in the U.S. Think of the function of government. A lot of your arguments came from a place of like a real drive not to have services go through the government or to raise taxes. It seemed like we have a very different view when it comes to things like that.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, let's start out. Noel, you go first.
Yeah, I think what I learned is that I learned the perspective of people in Canada. I mean, obviously they have their form of Medicare for all, and I think it was a good learning experience because I mean, like some of my teammates think that we shouldn't have Medicare for all because of all the cons as stated. But yeah, I think it was a good learning experience. I learned their perspective on it because I mean, they have their Medicare for all, and then we might begin, or the government might begin talking about implementing Medicare for all once Joe Biden takes office. So yeah, I think it was a good learning experience.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sierra?
I also agree with Noel that is, and the rest of people from Canada who think it's nice to hear other people's perspectives on something that we've always have, like non-Medicare for all. We always have to just go off of one thing and how we can see the side of people who do have Medicare for all, so we can see what the pros and cons are and how to deal with making a decision in a political basis.
One thing to share about Sarah's mother used to be in charge of medical insurance for our school district for many years. So, I mean, she probably has a pretty good insight of how complicated our insurance policies and stuff are in the States, which makes it really hard. I know her mom pretty well. Okay, let's go to Christoph.
I learned different perspectives and what we deem to think of ethics and economics and morality, I learned that based on our positions, then we're going to have different opinions. And it was a good learning experience overall.
Okay. And Marcus?
Well, I learned, I guess I learned to like see it more from Canada's point of view of like, you know, since they have the healthcare for free. So it was kind of interesting to you know, watch them explain it.
Okay, very good. And Kelly?
I learned how basically I got to start learning the viewpoint that Canada has on Medicare, and like I got to, you know, learn how they stand, and it was very interesting to watch how the debate is. It sort of changes your idea of what you have based on like, because we're so used to having the way we have our Medicare and insurance, and so it's very insightful to learn what they have and their opinions on that.
Yeah, it makes a lot better. It makes it kind of pop. If you just study from a book, you just get so much. Studying from real life's a lot better. Now, Sam, you're going to give a little lead in for next month.
Sure. Could I say one more thing
to
before?
everybody about what's going on in Toronto with that one case on autism?
Oh yeah, sure. So first off, I'd like to say something else. It's also been really interesting for me, and I just remembered this when you guys were talking. Thinking about the different types of like multi-payer and single-payer healthcare systems. So for Canada, we don't have Medicare for all. We have something, I guess, Medicare for all, to put it lightly, is the most radical healthcare program in the world. Other than possibly the UK's, where they've nationalized the healthcare infrastructure. Medicare for all includes quite a few stipulations that we have not yet implemented. For instance, optic care, other types of care. And so it's been really interesting getting, I guess, more into the nitty gritty of that. And when it comes to our next debate, which is happening at some point in January, I forget the date, I want to give us a little bit more time to do some research. It is on the automatism defense. So in Toronto not too long ago, there was a man who ran a truck into the street, onto the sidewalk, and he killed, I believe, 8 people and injured many more. And now his trial is going on. And his trial is, his lawyers to defend him are using the defense of automatism based on his autism diagnosis. So they're saying that, and you'll find out more when you do more research, that because he is autistic, there was a certain level of non-accountability that he had, a level to where they would take that into account for his punishment, or even more so, not punish him in a traditional way. And so that is going to be our next debate topic, whether autism functions as a proper invocation of the automatism defense. So I was thinking to mix it up, because generally Canada is arguing on the, I guess, I don't know if I would say more progressive side. I would think that it was interesting if you guys were to argue that automatism should include autism, and we were to argue that it shouldn't. I'll have to think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll take you up on that one. That's good.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I am gonna go through Mr. Ellis and be emailing your teacher. Yeah. I'm just gonna call him Mike because that's the name I know. And we'll get the details sorted out, and we'll send you the emails and notify you.
I got a feeling if we had 3 speeches, I don't know if we want an economic on that. Really?
Yeah, it seems like the 3 stakeholders that we thought of were legal, moral, and then psychological. Okay. So legal to replace moral, and then psychological to replace health, because it's more of a specified issue. Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
I thank you guys so much as well. You guys have a special guest, right?
Yes, we had a special guest. I think he just left. but we had two guests here. We had one gentleman from the central office that brought in some visitors, and we had one from our assistant principal. We're supposed to have our principal drop in too, but you just missed him. We got to meet him at the beginning. But that was really nice. We were trying to focus a little bit more and try to put some backgrounds, and my computer went off, and we're having all kinds of computer issues.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, we're in a fairly fast growth area here in Austin too. And what the kids will probably, our students will tell you, is that our internets are probably more third world than many of the third world areas.
And maybe we can debate something around ISP regulation at some point during the year.
Yeah. I mean, you would not, I kid you not, we have talked to Peru. I've talked to people at 14,000 or 13,000 something feet altitude in the middle of a school where they have 40 people, and they're crystal clear.
Yeah, you gotta climb mountains to go to
5
some
miles
Peru
from here
schools.
to talk, and it sounds like we're underwater. So, this whole idea, you brought up a good point. This whole idea really is a mind-opening one, and the fact that we could actually have a discussion without trying to find out who wins or loses, but we actually win more by the dialogue. That's why I kind of want to put the feedback. Because I'm not really strong on government telling you what to do. That's my background and my age and where I came from. But I was talking to Taiwan earlier today, and their government puts an app on your telephone. If you are COVID and you're quarantined, you have an app on your telephone, and they GPS track you for 14 days.
Yep.
So they say, and everybody there said, well, that's bad, but it's not so bad.
It's that
I'm kind of worried about that when it comes to healthcare too. You just never know with our government.
Yeah, I think
our government is strange. Your government may not be as bad, but our government is a little strange.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the dialogue on what governments do. For instance, you saw the lockdown in South Korea. They had like exposure right away, but they got down on it. But like the amount of authority that the government has to do that,
Well, we're not that far away, and I love Korea. My family came from Korea around 600 AD, but I know my genealogy. But anyways, make a long story short, very authoritarian. Even North Korea. That's why North Korea is such an authoritarian state today. The Korean people will take authority, and it wasn't about 25, 30 years ago when they had a couple of military coups that overthrew elected governments in South Korea. So the authoritarians, you will see something like that happen. And then with the Chernobyl families running the things with the big business, they're pretty well used to the average person, taking account from somebody else saying something. So it's kind of strange, but I don't know. We're living in a very interesting world. That's all I say.
Yep.
Hey, Clayton, thank you so much. This was really wonderful today.
Yeah, it was good. Unfortunately, I didn't hear most of it because I was in another meeting. I was kind of on, and I was listening to see if there's any technical issues, but you guys dealt with them. And it looks like it was a conversation that was, it's very different from one country to the next. So it's a good conversation. There's a lot of learning that happened, and that's the most important piece there, the learning. So
I actually think this is better than we've had in years, because before it was more like a debate. I felt this was more like a dialogue, which is fine.
That's true. That's right. And some of those debates have been a little heated.
Yeah, I know. I remember some of those. Okay, so we're learning, and I think the most important thing is to come out with it and build some friendships and some other things. But you guys are very, very brilliant. Sam's a very brilliant person.